and we're live. But anyway, Mahlatse, thank you for doing this, man. I know it's not easy, but it's not easy, but what's this? It's always good when I can have a friend to help me out with these podcasts and everything. So I really appreciate it.
We've been friends, so that's why I agreed to this. Otherwise, I'll be like, this guy, he just wants me to talk. I don't know what they're gonna talk about.
Yeah. Do you actually remember when we became friends? Like first time, because I remember the first time we met was first year. What subject was that? That research subject, LST.
We're doing first year and we're doing this research thing.
Yeah.
I checked my emails and the first email I sent you was somewhere in 2014 and it was a report that I had to send to you. And then the other guys to check. I think that's when we met. First semester.
Yeah.
First semester.
But then we didn't really become friends then. I think we just
late second year.
Yeah, late second year. Then we remember actually we did that project together and then we started studying together and going on this, that actuarial path that was brutal to say the least.
Yeah.
And we're here now. Where you are actually one of the few people who who knows a thing or two about artificial intelligence and machine learning, and because you've been doing some work that's related to it.
Yeah.
And but to your in your own definition, your own words, how can you define artificial intelligence?
So for me, obviously, let's start with the reason why people want to do this AI thing, right? It's because in a way, right, we need intelligent people and intelligent systems. So for a long time, people wanted to make machines as intelligent as humans. Because remember, the computers, they're only intelligent because we programmed them to be that way. So they won't be smarter than the person who programmed them. So in a way, as a programmer, I give it 1% of intelligence. The other 99% is natural, right? And the other thing with human intelligence is that, in a way, it's not easy to automate it. So when you meet Einstein, you can't replicate him easily. Even by biological means and say, okay, let's make another Einstein. And it's not that easy. But then with AI, artificial intelligence, you can replicate it. If you make this smart software, you can just sort of make it available to other people so that they can download it, etc. Automation is also an important aspect of AI so that they can replicate it. There's been smart people in the world, but then now there's the question of ethics. Is it ethical to make another model?
You're going to start talking about CRISPR now and stuff, and what's this genome editing stuff. But you understand what you mean.
So for me, right, if you can clone the smart guys, that would be my definition of AI. Then you don't have to go through the whole process of programming things, which is also fun, but then, but the thing is that when you think of intelligence, right, human intelligence, and say what makes people intelligent, so the first thing that comes to mind is vision, like the ability to see. That's what makes you intelligent. So that's how you see that with in the AI space, the computer vision is the one that people have been driving so fast because of a lot of what makes you intelligent, because of you can see that we have a cup here. You can see like the person in front of you can recognize things. Just by recognizing things, you already know a lot about the environment. Part of being intelligent. I mean, if you are in the middle of savannah there, in the middle of a forest, if you can't see what's coming next to you, if you can't see within the 100 meters.
Yeah.
In a way, I understand this human conditions where people can see only close or only far, short-sightedness versus. But then my point is that if you can see around you, if you're familiar with the environment, that's a big part of being intelligent. And I was listening to the story last time where a doctor explaining that people who are extremely intelligent, like Einstein type intelligent, Sheldon Cooper, those guys, they generally have larger pupils, right? So they see more because they want details for them to solve hard problems. So if you can find the right details, if you can collect a lot of data and put it in your brain, then you can solve harder problems. So you don't need a lot of data, a lot of information, a lot of facts. You don't need the nuances, like the nitty-gritty to solve some small problems. But then if you want to solve a hard problem, right, then you need to sort of collect a lot of data. And most of the time it's through eyes. And then obviously reading,
and
observation, lab experiments and stuff. And it comes from your eyes, right?
And the fact that all of that is compounded on each other. The fact that it's not just my ability to see that there's a desk, but it's also my ability to see that there's a desk and my ability to walk. Those two things together form something, forms my kind of intelligence. Because the analogy you used about seeing is that, I think Itu, he did Master Science adverts.
Yeah.
He once used the analogy and says that the thing about artificial intelligence is that if you put, let's say, in a four-roomed wall, like a four-walled room, and there's couches and there's chairs and there's tables and everything, and then you put a machine in the middle and say, find the door. The first thing the machine is going to do is just go straight, and then it's going to bump something, and then it's going to go, okay, there's something, and then go left, and then it's a bump something, and then it starts drawing perimeters of knowing, like, okay, 200 meters from this place, there's something in front. If I go to the left, there's something there blocking, and then it starts building from those things and knowing that, okay, there's something here and here, and slowly but surely it starts building the room and knowing that there's a chair here, there's a couch here, there's a thing here, so those paths are blocked, and then it finds the most appropriate path, and then until it finds the door. So its ability to see has to be learned over time. While with a human being, you place them in the middle of the room, they just do a 360 and then they're like, okay, there's a couch there. They don't have to bump into it to know that there's a couch there.
Yeah.
It's their ability to see already adds onto their intelligence of knowing where the best path to go to the door is.
Yeah, exactly. And from evolution perspective, the reason why we stand upright is because of over time, the ability for us to see the environment has become important. And if you are facing down, then it's hard to see, right? But then, because we are more exposed as animals, we're actually weak physically compared to a lot of animals in the jungle. So then you have to see.
you have to come up with a way to survive. So seeing better than other animals will guarantee you more survival. Because then you can start seeing them from a further distance away, actually.
Yeah, exactly. You can see from far that, and that's a lie. I'm not going there. But then, I think adjusting to parameters is a big part of intelligence. So I'll go back to soccer. I know we spoke about soccer before the podcast, but it's a good topic to talk about because of there's a lot of things going on, right? From the way we interact in the field and stuff like that. So adjusting to the size of the ball, that's actually an interesting one. I remember when we started playing that, right? We were playing with size 4 soccer ball, right? For me, my first game, I did terribly. Like, they just say, hey man, Mahlatse, you need to come in and show us what you can do. And then the first thing I noticed, this ball is very small. I always played size 5. That's the standard size. But then they had a size 4 thing. And then I was playing, even though I can still kick the ball, I can still play. But then it took me a long time to adjust to the parameters of the ball. But then as time went by, then I started being more efficient. I know how to, tap the ball and
the weight of the ball, how far it kicks when you kick it in a certain way.
Yeah, exactly. And I like samba. So before when I was doing samba, then the ball was getting to the other leg.
Because they used to have maybe a bigger ball that, samba is easier there, but you cannot do the same thing with a smaller ball. You just have to adjust.
Yeah, with the small ball rolls fast, I remember. And then as you're doing samba, it's going to the other leg. Yeah. And then it's also not heavy, right? It's not heavy. So the weight of the ball is also important. So if you play with a lighter ball, it doesn't feel the same if you play with a heavier ball. Then the heavier ball, you know how much you kick it. But then the light ball, it always takes own direction. And then in the second season, now we have size 5 now. Then it's another adjustment. It's another adjustment. So now my brain is like, these guys are just messing with you.
But talking of adjusting and parameters, when it ties back to artificial intelligence and how you try to make a machine in quote unquote intelligent, a big thing is also about getting the parameters not right per se, but having the machine be able to learn which parameters are efficient and in which circumstance they're efficient at. Is that a big thing, or is that something that is overestimated in that field?
So AI is always about parameters. AI, machine learning is always about parameters. Obviously, machine learning is not really AI, right?
What's the difference?
Machine learning is mostly like general algorithms, how to do something, and how much weight you should put on different aspects. For example, when thinking of the idea of classifying things, say you have a machine learning project, you need to classify in a Titanic who's gonna survive and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, people before, they didn't know that if a ship sink, what is the most important thing? What would make a person survive? It's not an AI problem, it's a machine learning problem because of it comes from, there's always some predefined things that would help a person survive. So there's a Kaggle challenge where they let people build a model that would predict in a Titanic who's going to survive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, when you're just studying the problem, it feels like, oh man, this is a hard problem.
Because even when I'm like, okay, maybe throw the chest over, but after that, it's like, wait, what's going to happen?
But I'll just let you guess. Just one thing that you think might be a determining factor. It might not be the most important, right? But what do you think will determine whether the person is going to survive or not? Is there something that comes to mind? Without thinking about the analysis, something about stats and...
what's this? If someone has a life jacket. Because that's like... eventually, if you go into the water, the difference between having a life jacket and not having one will be immersive in terms of waiting for rescue. You know what I mean? So that for me, that's like on top of the head. Okay, if you have a life jacket, you stand much more chance in surviving the shipwreck.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can be rescued. Someone can see you like once you float in there and stuff like that.
You are able to wait longer for survival than someone else.
Than otherwise.
And that aspect is just a game changer, I guess, for me.
Yeah, I think it's also a human thing and also economics. Because there's few lifeboats, right? And then there's also a ranking, say who comes first, right? And you can guess women and children first thing.
Always.
Yeah, if you're a child, and then you're likely that someone will want to save you, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then if you're a guy like me, right? And then they ask you and they say I'm single about that. They're like, yeah, man, we'll see you.
Good luck.
Good luck, man. We'll see you. God is great.
Yeah, you had a nice life, man.
Enjoy that time. You used to go to parties and stuff. So,
yeah.
So that's machine learning. It's just to be able to sort of group things. And once you find a pattern, that's where the automation comes in. Then you just replicate it. Another project that people have been running for a long time is identifying trees.
Yeah.
Say if you are in a forest and you need some sort of a herb or something, how do you know? Then you can just download an app and scan it, and the app will tell you what tree it is. And that's machine learning. It's not really AI, because there's some fixed things about the tree, the branching and stuff like that. It's the same, right? It's DNA. It's replicated all over the place in the forest. Then once you find one tree, and train it on that tree, or let's say you find 100 trees and train your algorithm on that tree, then chances are the next 100 trees will be the same.
Yeah.
There might be small variations, but usually the variation is not that significant. But then machine learning is always about parameters. So if you think of why sometimes you see certain ads on your social media.
Let's say you were talking about furniture on social media, and all of a sudden, you get a furniture ads there. Is that machine learning?
That's machine learning. They want to say like because of why. The timing thing is actually important. Let's say they pick up that today we're talking about Atlas, right? Talking about the glass, and then there's a company that sells glasses, and then this company tells people that, hey, if you hear someone talking about Atlas, just let us know, then you can show him. And then Google has to decide when should I show this person, and that's very important. Because if I'm talking about the class now, and then they show me the class right now, that's dodgy. Right?
It's too fresh in the memory. It's
too fresh. I'm like, they're listening.
Yeah, exactly. But if they wait like 2 or 3 days and then they show you at the class, you'll be like, oh, I was looking for a class the other day. And
I need a class, man.
Yeah, and then they just... I actually never thought because I always knew that the ads that they show you are related to what you talk about per se, but I never considered the time effect of they put a little bit of delay of knowing, because other people assume like, oh, they just found out now, or what's this. But what they do know is that they find out as soon as you type that thing. They just give you a bit of breathing room. And then afterwards, they're like, oh, okay, now that you forgot about it a bit, let's just remember you were looking for a class the other day.
Yeah.
Because, like, for instance, now we're talking that I'm looking for a study table and a study chair. And my girlfriend Kola was busy helping me to look for those things. And then we were looking at websites and stuff like that. The same day went on Instagram. It was normal. The next day when we went to Instagram, the ads were furniture ads. So it wasn't an immediate effect thing. It was like, it waited like a day or two now before the ads started showing. So now it makes sense that they don't want to freak you out, but they know already.
They know.
So they use machine learning to just be able to know, what's this? Find the pattern of like, people who talk about furniture are probably looking for furniture.
Yeah.
People who, what's this? And I'm guessing it could be something where they see of the people who type furniture, how many of them eventually went and searched furniture on Google to find furniture. And then if they see a major correlation between those two, they start seeing like, okay, most of the people that talk about certain products are looking for the product rather than just talking about them. So they advertise the products to those people. And so, because you can talk about a lot of things. Like right now, if I just say my glass is broke and stuff like that, I probably won't receive ads. But if I say my furniture broke, I probably will receive furniture. You know what I mean?
They show you that nice couch.
Exactly.
Yeah, they'll do that.
And maybe it's a thing of them machine learning of using the parameters to know that people who break these things are more likely to look for a replacement rather than those who are looking for a different product that they might wait for a longer period before trying to find a replacement. And that's just a machine learning algorithm playing around in the background of your phone or at some Facebook headquarters then.
Yeah, but that thing of Google and these companies tracking people, in a way, it encourages self-censorship, right? Think of what happened when they found out some governments, I don't know which ones, but some governments, they are involved in the tracking of people and stuff through their searches online and their online activity. And in 2013, when Snowden announced that this is a thing, like they're tracking you, and then all of a sudden, people never searched about medical conditions, right? If you have some medical condition, ADA, HD, and anything, you wouldn't search it online because then in a way, you're telling someone that you have it. Or you know something. Yeah. So they saw that the searches related to medical conditions, medicine, and all the stuff, right, that are related to people taking care of themselves, the searches just dropped, I think, by 30% or something. And stayed at that level ever since. People don't search those things anymore.
Because you just don't want to be tracked or let people know
of these things. Yeah, right. It's one of those things that, in a way, you don't want to store other people's information if they don't want you to store it. For example, when you go on a shop online and try to browse and stuff, obviously they might track you because of you visit them, you're a user, and then that's fine. But then now when you're on Google, you don't expect some other guy to have access to that data because humans are fallible. I mean, you can't really trust these people. The fact that they store it means someone will be able to access it, right? That's the problem.
And you don't know what they want to use it for. I mean, exactly. Like, we've all searched weird things, man. I mean, like, we've all searched the weirdest of things. Sometimes out of curiosity, sometimes because you're angry, sometimes because of, you know what I mean? You've all searched weird things.
We're curious.
Yeah, we're curious beings. And if you think that someone's going to use their curiosity against you, you're going to hold back a bit. Yeah. You're going to, not want to do that. And it makes sense for me because, medical conditions are very confidential and personal.
Exactly.
Yeah, so like just from the fact of stigma, some medical diagnoses have a stigma to it. You know what I mean? Some people suffer mental illnesses that have a stigma, but they're not that bad if taken care of. I mean, there are people who have bipolar but are living very, very healthy lives. They take their medication, they're bipolar out of control. But if you tell someone that I have bipolar, there was already a shift and a pullback because they're afraid. And and you don't want that as a human being too. That someone already has predetermined ideas of who and what you are, just based off of a condition that you have.
Exactly. And in a way, these things, they stay forever. If, for example, let's say you had some temporary condition, right? Maybe something that can be cured or something like that. But then you had it at some point, then you had to search about it, you have to find some information about it. Then you did look for it at that point in time. And then someone can just pull it up 20 years later. Think of the people that got kicked out of industries because of their tweets. Kevin Hart, he survived, thanks to God.
Well, yeah, he kind of survived. He had to give up the Oscars, but yeah, he survived.
Kevin Hart survived. I think people don't have a problem with Kevin Hart
anymore. Yeah, not as much. But also the thing is because this, the whole canceling thing is that a lot of people ride the wave when the wave is high, but as soon as a couple of months later, they just let it go and move on to something different. And they have said the thing about it is that sometimes you could root from something very small that happened 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And then they bring it up now. Because that's what happened with him, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that they brought comments that he said 10 years before, prior. And then it's like, in 10 years, someone cannot... It's one thing to say, man, he said the same thing last week, so I know but it's another to be like, this guy said this 10 years ago, is the same today without any convincing evidence to say he hasn't changed. It's difficult.
Yeah, think of the things you say when you're young. Because you don't know a lot, right?
You don't know.
And just talk. And plus, when you're young, you're more honest. I'm not saying all people are not honest, but young people are honest. Like if you
brutally honest, like kids.
Yeah, kids are honest.
I have a nephew and niece, and my niece is like 9 years old, and she's like brutally honest. Like she saw me with my dress, I was like, those things are ugly. I'm like, what are you saying? And then she wasn't trying to offend me or anything. She was just being like, oh, I'm used to you with short hair, that long hair, I don't like it. And I mean, it's just honesty. It comes with the innocence sometimes,
Yeah, I think old people are also scared of hating you. I think they're sensitive to that. So that's why they always want to... I think old people are people pleasers. A normal old person, normal is the keyword here. Yeah. They're people pleasers. I don't think they'll want to hate you. And even when they make jokes, it's well thought, right? They just don't make jokes. Because
it impacts their social standings most of the times also.
Yeah.
I mean, what's this? If you imagine... what's this? We have financial currency, but there's also social currency. If your social group and peers, what's this? If they regard you as someone who badmouths them all the time, someone who's always saying bad things about them, and they don't want to chill with you, and then they tell everyone that no one is going to want to chill with you, and you're going to be alone, and people don't want to be alone. They want to have friends. They want to be they want to be part of the group, be part of the party. You know what I mean? So if there's things that can take you out of the party, people will just little by little cut that off. And unfortunately, most of the times that people have friends that just always lie to them. Especially, you see this often when there's groups of people where there's one extremely rich person and 5 okay people are doing okay for themselves.
Yeah.
You realize that the person who's rich says whatever is on his mind without anything, because he's not afraid of being cast out in the group in a way, or he knows that they won't cast him out. While the people who are like more or less always in the party with him where he's spending money, they don't want to be the guy that's not in the VIP section. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they will lie, they will do everything, they will even sometimes cross their own boundaries in order to please this person to be part of the group.
But a lot of the time, I think it's just people feeling like they have to choose a side, be with this one or that.
Yeah.
But then if you look hard enough, or you don't even have to look hard, but then if you just check, you'll find that there's no need. You don't have to be this guy's friend or not.
Yeah.
Or you have to be like this guy's friend, or you have to chill with this one. Usually it's just, we just set this like boundaries ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then this thing of like pleasing people, it also comes with the fact that I think nowadays it seems like, I don't want to say it's the case, but it seems like financial freedom is the only freedom, right? There's no other way to think about it. Is that people want to be in a place where they can actually get a stable income and stuff. And then that's why the thing of pleasing people around you and all this thing. But then you don't have piece of the guy who helps you buy lunch and stuff.
Buy your drinks and get all the girls at the VIPs. You don't want to be that guy who is discarded from the group. Social currency is a very important factor in that element. But we talked a lot about how machine learning and the parameters and how it ties into it, which sounds a lot like statistics, basically. Like, I think the biggest point that I've always held in my mind was the one you told me, where you're like, people don't realize that machine learning is just a lot of regression modeling.
It is regression.
Yeah, and regression modeling is statistics. It's purely statistics. Not purely statistics, but it's mathematical statistics, and those two are very tight next to each other. But I just want to see the link between machine learning and artificial intelligence, because I always kind of assume that they're one, and I always thought they're synonyms in the case. So what's the big difference?
The main difference is that machine learning is a lot easier. I think AI is hard. That's a silly way to answer it. But then,
what is AI trying to achieve? Because I know I know you discussed that. It's trying to just. Can I put in simple terms and just say AI is just trying to imitate human intelligence?
That's the goal. That's the goal. You can't get to that easily. That's what machine learning is like. When you look at the pie chart, machine learning is like a wedge in a pie chart, right? It's not even half of me. It's not even half of AI. It's a small part of AI.
Oh, okay.
AI, it also comes with general intelligence, because of real AI. It's not just about statistics. It's not just about statistics. Remember.
Yeah.
But then machine learning is just purely statistics. It's about numbers, proportions, frequencies, and stuff like that. Like, you're trying to say, if I want to recognize this thing in machine learning, what is the most important thing about it, right? And then you need more numbers, so that how often does this thing happen, that kind of stuff. That's machine learning. It's about numbers. But then real AI, it has some aspects of numbers. Say the numbers, they make it more concrete, right? But then it's not about numbers only. Psychology also comes in. For example, let's say you want to develop a robot that can classify people when they are doing a contest, a fashion thing, or a beauty contest or something. You have a robot there, like, checking these people. It's not a human being. It's not me and you. Because culturally, we have our own notion of what's beautiful, right? When you see a beautiful car, a beautiful house, you can say this thing is beautiful, right? How do you teach AI to say that? So that's why the psychology thing comes in. Say, like, okay, can you see in a cultural aspect? Can you see the deeper stuff?
Because it's simple to say, okay, machine learning, there's 100 people, and then they have to choose between 10 houses. And then all of them have to rank the houses between ugly to beautiful. 0 between being the ugliest and 10 being the most beautiful. And then machine learning will come into effect and be like, oh, okay, the highest ranked house in terms of beauty is house number 2, for instance. And now house number 3 is the least beautiful. You know what I mean? And the machine will come into that and just do that. But a human being will come in and be like, okay, but this person comes from an environment where these houses are deemed more beautiful. That one grew up in thatched houses and mikukus, and he finds thatched houses more beautiful than that. So there's a little element of tradition, or culture,
subconscious. It's like some things that you don't think about. That's where the danger of machine learning comes in. Say, if you say a house is beautiful, sometimes when you survey people, right? Let's say, and that's what you see often happening in the family feud. The top answer that doesn't make sense. Say like, who did they interview? Right? Like, okay, I mean, these people really, they don't live in South Africa. But then it's the top answer there. That's why, because of it's about the volumes. But then AI is not necessarily about volumes actually. Sometimes the quality of the reasoning is also important. And
how do you teach a computer to be reasoning? That's all. Yeah,
exactly. And there's the interesting thing about machine learning algorithms, because of I think people use them for trading a lot, automatic trading. So they have this algorithms that just checks investor statements or the company statements and stuff, and then decide whether they want to buy or sell. And with the Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company, every time that girl, Anne Hathaway, that actor, is in the news, the keyword is Hathaway. Every time Anne Hathaway is in the news, the stock of Berkshire Hathaway goes up.
Really?
Exactly. Because of why? That thing doesn't know that Anne Hathaway and Berkshire Hathaway are different things. And then that's machine learning. Usually the reasoning behind it is narrow because it just focuses on the numbers.
It's too concrete, in other words.
Yeah, exactly. But then also, how do you teach a computer to know exactly what to do? It is difficult. Look at what Siri does, man. If you ask Siri a question, if you ask Siri saying, what is house it? Right? It's a way that it might recognize, it might not recognize. And then sometimes it will split up and say, okay, it's how Z. Maybe Z is some other funny way. And it's just going to tell you, oh, how's it is what. Or if it can't find what it's looking for, it's going to Google it and say, okay, now it's going to find a Wikipedia answer and start reading Wikipedia and say, oh, according to Wikipedia, what. Right? So you see, there's a lot of limitations, but AI is the end goal, but it's hard. I mean, it's also hard to make humans intelligent.
Yeah, like, I mean, we all know that the hard way, that we all have people, either friends or foes or however, where you try to get them to understand something, and in your mind it's so clear, it's so like, dude, you go from A to B, you get to see, you know what I mean? Like, you will tell them like, hey man, what's this? For instance, a simple thing is a matter of like telling people that, you know what, racism doesn't make sense because it's just a skin pigmentation thing. It's all that. So yeah, you'll tell them that there's skin pigmentation and something, but there's a cultural element and a teaching element in them that they don't want to listen to that aspect. They don't want to, you know what I mean? They don't want to get that point. And it's simple to someone who, you see this when you talk to someone who's been brought up amid different cultures versus someone who's been brought up in one culture, is that the person who's seen different cultures and different things starts understanding like, oh, they just do different things, they just learn different things that side, but we're all essentially the same place. While someone who's been brought up in one simple culture is very rigid to change because that's all he's ever known, and to him that's the only right he's ever been. So it's hard enough to teach humans to be more intelligent. How do you go and teach a machine to be intelligent to a human capacity?
Yeah, it is an interesting question, because even some people believe that the way we train people is also not good. That's why I see people have homeschooling, and then Elon Musk saying that these school systems are not good, blah, blah, blah. And they have good arguments. They say that people don't learn the same. Some people will excel in school and then others won't. But then in a way, it seems like historically, the school has been the best bet. It seems that way. It's like, how far can you go with the homeschooling thing? I don't know anyone who has been homeschooled, but it seems like a trend nowadays. People want to be homeschooled. Would you homeschool your kids?
No, I mean, what's this? I think it depends. You know what I mean? Because if you look at it from a purely academical perspective, you probably could achieve more in homeschool than they could in school, because you'll be able to kind of hone down on what they are really good at and focus on that from the get-go. And just, of course, you want to add variables like even though they don't like social sciences, you want to add it because it's an important aspect, but you overlook the fact of being around other kids, learning how to deal with people who are in a level above you. In school when you're in grade 8, there was initiations.
Yeah.
And then you had to quickly learn, okay, there are people who are older than me who are stronger. And you had to quickly learn there are people who are in grade 10 and I'm in grade 9, 8. They were where I was, and then they know more. And that thing, you don't consciously regard it when it happens, but a few years later, you start seeing like, oh, okay, I was a kid. And I realize that now because I was acting as a kid and I see how kids are acting now that I was. And I'm like, you see yourself in that. You know what I mean? And also the socialing with kids, knowing how to deal with bullies.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah. There's the little elements that happen outside the education itself that a school system provides that helps when you get out of it, which is, that's the one thing that makes me.
Because I think that's important. I mean, just being in a school, I think it's super important. I mean, you get to see the whole structure, and in a way, it's not exactly the way society is organized because of you don't have like a bunch of 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds in one group in society. It's usually spread out. But then in school, you get to see your seniors as society, you get to see your teachers, all these different levels of authority. And people like to believe that that's actually ways that people want to control you. It's not necessarily about control. I mean, a 12-year-old, an 8-year-old, they have to be controlled. What can they do?
Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
And then they'll tell you that, oh, this thing is putting in a box. And for some people, maybe it does. But then how do you measure that? How do you know that they're putting someone in a box? Then they have to be rebellious enough to go their own way.
And I can give you a good example of a social aspect that I only realized later on. You know what I mean? Because for instance, it's actually two things that happened separately. One happened in school and one happened in varsity. That, like, it broke my mind in a way. Was I grew up in a household where I have both parents, they both love me, the parents get along. You know what I mean? Mm. And then in high school, I met a guy. I was in boarding, and so this guy hated his dad. Like, he didn't like him at all, and it didn't make sense to me. You know what I mean? I didn't get it. And then he told me that his dad left the mom and stuff like that, and they've been fending for themselves ever since. But his mom picked it up, and his way is now because of the mom, and the dad is just there. And to me, with my good upbringing and innocent mind, I was just like, it didn't make sense. And then later on in varsity, I also met another friend who actually wasn't a friend. I went to a party and they were friends, and people were talking about their dads and stuff like that. And then some chick was like, I will never forgive my dad. I'm like, he's your parent. You know what I mean? You have to forgive them. Yeah. And she just wouldn't budge. And it didn't make sense to me until I realized, like, I think a year or two later, I realized, like, dude, there's human beings, and some human beings are just trash. Just because you grew up in a good environment doesn't mean that everyone's parents are like that. Some parents are not loving, and that's the truth. Some parents are very abusive. And it took a schooling system a couple of years and people I'm exposed to learn that don't become someone like that. Or not even just don't become someone like that, but to realize that people like that exist. And it's the way life is. Life is not this little picture that you painted in your mind. Life is way more complicated than that. Yeah. And I think it helped me also just to be able to empathize with some people. Yeah. So now I meet some people who don't have good relationships with their parents, and I completely understand that not everyone can have the same relationship that I had.
I think part of the reason is that generally, kids develop their relationship with their dads, their fathers specifically. It grows very slowly. I think is only after the child has matured, they're old enough to think for themselves and stuff, that they can engage with their fathers. And then before that is that thing not papa can child. From both genders, right? Yeah. From both genders. And we like to talk about this with my friends, and they all say the same thing: is that tough love thing is too tough. Right? Is that they want you to be a better person, but at the same time, it's disengaging because then now you always have to follow the rules. You can't just ask them to do your own thing. You can't ask them to sort of explore other things. Then there's always that thing that we know what we're doing, so we're trying to help you.
Yeah.
And then
a good example was I saw one of my friends who I went to high school with. She said that she always thought she had strict parents because they never let her go to sleep outs and stuff like that, and sleepovers with her friends, until she grew up and realized what happens at some of these sleepovers, how some of these parents are. You're just like, whoa, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you can imagine sleepover where it's a lot of girls, they're young girls. There are just some, there are some parents who are, who are creeps, who are, there's a lot of things that you don't know about a lot of people, because as much as you want to think human beings are all nice and dandy, there's a lot of bad people out there. And it's just like, that's when I was like actually thankful that they did that. That as a kid, I thought it was bad, but when I grew up, I'm like, actually, these guys knew that the world is not as good as you thought it was. Which makes me think that trying to attain to building a machine that goes to human intelligence.
Yeah.
Is that such a good idea?
We might build Elon Musk, and there's also a chance that we might build Stalin or Hitler. So it's just one of those things. But then also, we believe that we can control it, but then smart people think that chances are we might not control it because of these things are done by other smart people, and then they might have other intentions. But then we believe that the intention is always good. That's the assumption. We assume that the intent is good. But then also, historically, it hasn't been the case, right? It hasn't been the case.
What has been the case?
It hasn't been the case because of people who like sort of build these things. They use it for other things. I mean, look at Facebook. Me, I quit Facebook 5 years ago, bro. I'm not going back. No, I'm not.
Serious?
I'm not going back.
I had to kind of go back to broadcast the podcast. And when I was looking at my message, I was like, what was I thinking here? What was I writing? But also, I think we quit it at around the same time. Because I also quit it in like my second year or third year there.
We spoke about it. I remember I was at the fields and then you were trying to like explain to me why that's a stupid idea. But then you also came the next day and you were telling us, I don't remember, Tabang was there maybe, and you were telling us that, no, this is not a good idea, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, it was that time that there were speculations about Russia, not Trump, blah, blah. It was just the perfect time to quit.
Yeah.
Remember? It was the perfect time to quit.
I think I quit kind of before that due to other reasons. I think I quit because I thought, you see how Instagram is now, where it's all about nice life. No one posts the reality.
Yeah.
And it just, when you eat something and you just like, there's so much processed food in here.
Yeah.
I'm not even enjoying. My body just feels off just consuming this. That's how I felt with Facebook. I just felt like there's just so much unrealistic expectations, fakeness, people. And it's because I knew people personally that when I looked at their Facebook feed, I'm like, nigga, this is not you. This is not how you're living. You know what I mean? And from then I quit, and then it just became worse with all these hackings and monitoring. But what's this? And I've never went back. But just not to cut you off, you were saying why you quit Facebook.
For me, the ads thing was creepy. Because I've noticed it before the suspicion. Obviously, it wasn't because of they were listening to us. At that time, it wasn't a thing. Mm-hmm. But then the stuff I was searching, they would appear there. That's the problem. It's like, man, this thing is not going to work.
So that's why you quit and you're never going back.
Yeah, think about it, man. I was a student, and most of my time I'm in the lab there, Merensky. At that time, my laptop was not working, and I'm using the university computers and stuff. And everything I'm searching there, sometimes I want to buy something. I need to make sure about size and stuff. Say,
yeah, of course.
Okay, stuff like that. And then I go read reviews and stuff. And these things, they just pop up on Facebook. This doesn't make sense. What? This doesn't make sense. But then also other people were like, okay, Facebook is also tracking you, and then that information is going to be stored forever. That's when I found out about Edward Snowden. But I didn't actually follow up about him, but I just knew that he said that this information that Facebook collects, and it ends up in the government's hands. So I was like, no, this is not good.
So you think the same thing might happen, for instance, if we build a super intelligent computer that thinks like us, that as much as the intention might be good, eventually they can become someone who takes it and uses it for bad.
Yeah, obviously these things will be built to help people make money. They won't be built for other things, other reasons. It's always about making money. Yeah,
because, for instance, we can talk about numerous things that AI can help with. I mean, from the simple thing as finding efficient ways to grow limbs back on. You know, people, a lot of scientists are busy with stem cell research, and stem cell research is basically they're using. So when someone is a baby, the stem cells inside of a baby is what helps them grow better and stuff like that. And so they trying to use the same mechanism that can grow some things back, and humans are not able to comprehend them better, but a super intelligent computer will be able to absorb that information and solve that problem for us. You know what I mean? There's our limitations in computation power has a limit that computers don't. And if you let a computer have our thinking with its computing power, it will be able to solve a lot of more problems that we are just struggling to solve. Like, you can imagine, light speed travel. We have an idea, but we don't have the breakthrough because we cannot picture it perfectly. We cannot solve the unsolvable mathematical problems. But if you take a computer that has the computing power and the human intelligence together, it might solve a lot of our problems.
It might take us far.
But the problem is that if that thing turns into a Hitler, can you stop it? You know what I mean? Can you stop it? Because now it's more intelligent than you.
Yeah.
And you probably thought of 1,000 ways to counter everything that you thought you can counter it with.
Yeah. But in a way, I think we went so far by just expecting AIs to be our savior. Maybe we should stop saying, because I understand there's benefits like with self-driving, this stuff that automation would always have benefits, right? Mm-hmm. Self-driving cars and stuff like that. But then at the same time, we tend to believe that other things can only be done by AI, which I don't believe is the case. People have done crazy things before, and they'll continue to do crazy things. So we can't expect AI to be the thing that will always do crazy things.
Yeah, no, I agree with that also, is that because I don't, as much as someone can try to program an AI machine, I think we're far away from an AI painting a Mona Lisa. You know what I mean? That's something creative and like, 12 super picture. Like, if you hear experts talking about that thing, you'll be like, when I didn't even think, or they'll be like Peter's hand, the way it's reflecting towards what. It's like someone reciting a poem where a grade 10 learner is reading a poem versus an English lecturer reading the same poem. They can get vastly different inspirations from the thing. And I'm not sure a machine learning thing can write a Romeo and Juliet novel. You know what I mean? Or I think it's far from that. It tries to mimic it, but there's just something about how Shakespeare's words draw you in, how he paints the picture so clearly, how he takes out the emotion just by writing words on a piece of paper. And I think it's a human element that maybe he's so in touch with his emotions that he knows what to do to bring those emotions out more. And maybe that's something AI will struggle for a long time with, finding able to solve mathematical problems and probably make jet engines way much more faster and efficient. But as the matter of creativity and the arts and culture, I think we still have a long way to go with it, and I'm not sure if it's even possible.
Yeah, it seems like the ability to create art is the ultimate human expression. And I mean, poetry, for me, I understand poetry is complicated. I actually never really understood poetry. I think the last time I read poetry was in high school. It was required. You have to read those Shakespeare sonnets and all those things. But Poetry is something because of it is open to interpretation, and can a computer think of all the possible things? Can it think of all the possible ways of interpreting a piece of literature? And chances are it might learn over time, but then at this point it's like it might also come up with some crazy interpretations. But also us as humans, sometimes we come up with crazy interpretations because of we can easily be primed, we can easily be framed. Think of the framing thing. When a story happens, the news publisher decides how they want to frame it so that people interpret it in a certain way. They frame it that way, and then a computer is also susceptible to that because of depending on the words they use in there, the interpretation will change. Even though the words are synonyms, synonyms are not the same. Being excited and being
elated, per se.
The interpretation is different. Sometimes some words express tension better than others.
Yeah.
So
they paint a more vivid picture than others do.
Right?
Because for instance, I think a good example that I've learned for that was when someone was like, the difference between saying, "Oh, I saw a horrible accident," and someone say, "Oh, I saw a gruesome accident."
Yeah.
The gruesome one, you kind of, it feels a bit deeper. You can kind of already imagine something incredibly horrendous. While horrible, you understand horrible is bad. It's worse than bad. But when someone uses gruesome, it takes something inside you, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a psychology thing. Because of, I think there's the exact example of like things bumping into each other. I don't know where it appears. I think it's that thinking fast and slow. But I'm not exactly sure. But this mental experience and then how people think. So they had a video of a car. So I think it's simulated, like two cars, and they have different speeds there. And then depending on what weight they use for the collision. So collision is one of them, is bumping, collision, crashing, like those similar words.
Yeah.
And then they'll tell you that this car crashed into it, but then it was going at 20.
Yeah.
And people will be scared, like, oh, this is too much. But then it's going at 20. But then they say it bumped 100. They're like, it bumped, it's fine. It bumped, it's fine. That's a good example because the word is important. The actual word is important, right? And then in poetry, the idea of having a poem is that in a way there's a theme, right? But then the interpretation is different. It's different. I was looking into this, I don't know if it's my sister or who. There's one person I know who likes Maya Angelou. And she likes to say that Maya Angelou is a motivational person, and because me, I'm like, no man, Maya Angelou is a realist. I think she likes to talk about things the way they are. And for her, she's like, no man, this lady, when I'm down and stuff, then I get inspired. But in my mind, I'm like, there's no way, it doesn't make sense. How? Because I wouldn't read Maya Angelou if she was a motivational or inspiration or whatever. Because the fact that she understands the reality, right? And she sort of paints things as they are. That's what I like about her.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I like about her. But then, because of, I didn't read the poetry, I'm not the poem person. But then the people who read poetry, they're like, hey, Angelou, she takes me places. And I understand. I understand. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, what's this? So, with that being said, do you think with what Elon Musk is doing, Neuralink, basically, because as you said, you're not sure if people should actually still be pushing AI to human intelligence, because I'm assuming that you are also in his bracket, because Elon Musk is completely not scared, but he's one of the biggest vocals against AI, just doing AI unregulated.
Yeah.
Because he's just like, guys, if this thing keeps going, we're going to get to a point in time where we cannot take it back and we cannot control it, and that's going to be very dangerous. You know what I mean? It's going to be very dangerous to us. And his solution is twofold. First, he has an open AI company, which basically the code they do for AI, they put it out. But actually, now that I say that, I think they are starting to keep some of the code to themselves, because is becoming, they're getting exceedingly close to, not close, but, to a point where the AI is like really thinking for itself, and they're afraid that people might use that code for illicit things, as you say. And the second thing that he's doing is the neural link company that he has, where he basically implants a chip inside your head that you see the way you talk to your phone. Like everything you need something, what is ADHD? You take out your phone, Google ADHD, Google pops up, and you don't have to think. Google thinks for you, per se. It has the answers for you. That chip that's gonna implant in your brain is gonna do that. So you don't have to take out your phone. Your phone is in your mind, in a way. In simple terms, you are able to just think of something and it pops up in your mind.
Yeah.
I want to call Mahlatse. I'm just like, hey, man, down Mahlatse. And then Mahlatse, I was like, oh, what are you doing, man? Basically, we're basically communicating with our thoughts, quote unquote our thoughts, but it's that brain implant that's working on our behalf. Do you think that is a good way to go? Because in his explanation, he says, if we cannot stop it, the least we can do is try to do something that can help us coexist with them. And the only way to coexist with them is to have, is to be on the same playing field. Yeah. Like the reason humans don't coexist with Springboks is because we think we're better than them. You know what I mean? We think like, no, I'll kill you now and die. Oh, you're a lion. I'll take out a gun and shoot you in the head. You will see who's the bigger person. You know what I mean? So lions cannot coexist with us because we are just that much more powerful. And he feels like if machine learning, if AI gets to a certain point where we are just babies to it, it will see us as babies. But if we have a thinking capacity that it's at its level, maybe we'll be able to live with it. Where there'll be different AI machines with different personalities that we communicate as if they were regular people and regular our peers, more or less.
Yeah, there's something dangerous about having a piece of technology that only a few people can understand. The fact that he tries to sort of make it freely available, it's so that if the guy next door or down the street understand what you're doing, chances are you can use malicious is very, very low, right? You also try to like sort of control it in a way. So I can't think of a concrete example here, but then in a way, for example, coding, the fact that there's so many programmers in the world, millions and millions and millions, people are no longer scared of coding that much, right? Mm-hmm. But the AI thing will be driven by code and algorithms. I mean, code will always be there. They're a bit worried because of, in a way, the machine learning algorithms themselves is sometimes the results don't make sense, but then the algorithm works, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, how does this thing work? It's a black box. It does the job well, but how does it work? Yeah. It's like having that evil genius, right? And they can solve any problem, but then you try to ask them, hey, how does this thing work? Then they can't explain it to you. They're so smart, they can do anything, but then they can't explain what they're doing. And if we get to that, and then the AI just sort of make decisions for us, and then we don't know why it's making those decisions.
Oh, yeah.
And then we just sort of follow through. And that's the ultimate dictatorship, right?
Yeah,
like, okay, this thing is smart. I mean,
yeah, I'm sure you've seen that. What is it called? Love, Death and Robots.
I've heard about it.
You still haven't seen it?
I haven't watched it.
So one of the episodes in there is basically it's a machine that it's an AI machine. I'm not sure it's an AI machine or some object or something, but basically that object, they ask it questions and it quickly learns and after it learned so much, it was able to help people with the problems. And then the US government employed it. And then they're like, okay, come up with the best economic plan, that no one starves, everyone is efficient. And it drafted the most perfect thing. And it's like, follow this thing to the T and everything will be good. But humans being humans, there's greed, there's all that, they tweak it, and everything collapses. And it's like, y'all don't know what you're doing. It literally put me in charge of this thing, of this one society, and then I'll help you out again. And when they put it in charge of the society, it created the best system ever. Everyone was happy. Everyone was living life, but no one understood what was going on. No one understood how it was doing it. But all they knew was it was working.
Yeah.
And then people were afraid of it.
But that's happening already. I mean, think of how they live in North Korea. They believe that their president is God or something.
Mm.
And it's happening now as we speak. Like, these people...
At a human level.
Yeah. Yeah. And they tell you that, what happens there is crazy. I mean, the president can die and no one would know what happened to the president. And they're like, oh, he's still alive. I mean, the president's fine.
And to them, that's the only thing they know. They don't even... North Korea is actually such a sad case because from the outside, you might think, okay, but they're fine. But in reality, journalists that go there, say there's a lot of people who starve. There's a lot of, there's so much propaganda. There's so much, people don't know what's going on the outside world. They don't know what the outside world is. And that's because also us on the outside, we don't know what's going on because there's so much information walls built around that thing. We don't know how, like this year alone, Kim Jong-un died 6 times. And no one knows if it's true or not because you cannot know. Yeah. Those inside it have probably been told, some haven't been told. They don't know. They can only rely on this one single entity. There's something dangerous about relying on a single entity. Yeah. And I think that's what people are afraid of with AI, is that if it becomes so powerful that we rely on it solely and we cannot do nothing because it's so much that more powerful than we are, that will be helpless. And if it wants to wipe us out, I mean, like, it's not difficult to imagine why you want to wipe us out. I mean, humans, we are idiots, we are greedy, we are destroying the planet. You know what I mean? It can just be like, you know what, this place is heaven, except for these people are not making it heaven. Wipe out these people and this place will thrive. And, that's...
It's crazy because of, we are the last remaining species. I mean, most species, they just disappear. Some of them come back for odd reasons. Or maybe because of the people who track this species. They don't track everywhere. Some species just come back to life. Other species of rats, they're like, okay, we thought this thing is extinct, but then now we can just find it.
Because most of the time it's also estimations, just to saying that these kind of species only live in certain environments. And that's what we know historically. And these species then adapt to different environments. But because we know the environments that we know of that they live in are no longer in existence, and we don't see those species with our eyes anymore. We just assume they're extinct. But then you see them popping out of nowhere, like, oh, it's not extinct anymore. There it is.
But also the land is big, man.
Yeah, exactly. A big statistic was that only about, was it 5%?
Yeah.
5% or 10%? No, 5% of the oceans has been explored.
That makes sense.
Yes, exactly.
Because the ocean is like 60 to 70% of the surface.
Yes,
or more,
and it's deep.
It's deep.
There's levels that we cannot see because it's too dark for us to see. Like, they just captured footage of a squid not long ago, and they thought those things are mythical creatures.
Yeah.
And it was because it was so deep, they live so deep down where it's too dark for anyone to see, that the submarine thing that they used to capture these things went to a level deeper than it has went before, and it was able to capture it.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean? So the fact that only about 10% of the world's ocean has been discovered just shows you how much we don't know about anything that's going on in our world. Yeah. So now you want to bring in something like AI that you don't understand, which I know people are very scared about the idea that you might have a chip implanted in your brain, but if that chip is going to help you coexist with something that's going to eventually take over, I think that's the best bet that we know of so far.
Yeah, because I haven't followed the neural link closely, but then how would it work? If you want to Google something, if you want to search for something, you want to look up some details. Maybe it's not the definition. Maybe you want to find an explanation for something. Just
imagine your phone without having to take it out of your pocket, but in your brain. You see how Google Glasses, you can do your eyes like this, and then it does this. That thing has access to your neurons. and is able to predict what your neurons is trying to think or trying to do. So what's this? You use your neurons to communicate with it.
Yeah.
So you basically use your thoughts to communicate with it, because thought is just a pathway of the neurons communicating with certain neurons, and that flashing there, flashing that side. It's because also you don't understand anything about the brain so far, which is one of the biggest hurdles about this neural link thing, is that not a lot of people know anything about the brain. So people don't know. Right now, if I say think of an apple, and an apple pops up in your mind, what happens in your brain? Something happens in your brain, specific something happens in your brain. Yeah. A lot of people don't understand what happens. But if people understood what happens in the brain, and then someone who doesn't know what an apple is, and then they fire those same neurons, and an apple pops up and they're able to see it, that would be something that will work. You know what I mean?
Okay, because the brain in a way is the most efficient computer.
Yes.
Because it just knows when to retrieve information.
Yes.
Some things you think you forgot them. They just come up at the right time.
Exactly. And it's able to store information that you don't use away, so that you don't always running it at high capacity. It's just, you're always running it at a level that you need to run it at. If you don't want to use information, you put it at a back burner. That's why you have a subconscious, because there's so many things deeply embedded in your brain that you don't think about on a daily basis. But when you need to think about it, all of a sudden you react accordingly, because there's somewhere there. You know what I mean? It's like, imagine having a hard drive, an external hard drive that you don't use, but the day you need to use it, you just plug it into your computer and you use it. That could be similar to your, it's more like that's how I imagine subconscious is. Just like you cannot plug it in. It's just difficult. Another thing, we don't understand consciousness, we don't understand subconsciousness. There's a lot that we don't understand. And that's, I think, one of the main things that Neuralink, the secondary effects that's gonna... Yeah.
But the way your brain works is related to your personality in many ways. So, for example, some people, they can easily remember people's names, right? Mm-hmm. They can easily remember people's names because of their brains. They can just offer that information immediately. Because to that person, knowing a people's name, knowing the person's name and the people they interact with is very important to them. But then now you find this other person who actually, they'll only remember your name if they think it's important to remember your name, right? They won't just remember you. And those people, they tend to remember a few names. But then they're more interested in other things, that they remember the details in depth also. They'll store like information about events and like the sequence of things, how things happen and stuff. And then you ask them like, how did this thing happen? And who was there? They'll remember the details about how this thing happened. But then the people involved, they're like, I don't remember this guy, he was wearing a blue jacket. But then they remember the events, how they unfolded, which is also interesting. But then it's something that it's also baked in our DNA. That what do you value as a person?
Yeah. Interesting you say that, because I'm not so sure if it's DNA. I think it might also have, I think it's that argument about nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
Like, is it the environment you grew up in, or is it the body that you were born in? You know what I mean? Some people remember names because maybe as young kids, remembering names was important to them. So eventually the brain develops that way. And some people remember patterns because as kids were, for instance, I don't know how much of playing chess from a young age shaped the way I think. Yeah. Because chess forced me to be objective, to be like, you know what, I'm losing here. And it is what it is. Yeah. I can either cry about it or try to get out of this losing position to get better in this position and to, do that. It taught me to be like, okay, let me sacrifice this thing. It might seem bad, but what's this? I'm sacrificing this for a bigger role. Okay, what's this? Let's solve this problem one by one. What's the problem? My piece is stuck here. Let me take out my piece first. Okay, once it's stuck, okay, this piece is useless. Okay, let's put it into the game. Okay, that king is weak. How do we organically and forcibly go to the king and kill it?
Yeah.
And win that way. So my brain was forced to be able to problem solve one by one and go from one step to another, and also change like, oh, I just made a mistake. I can't do another mistake. The game has to keep moving forward. Let me rectify my mistake by making my position better and better. And eventually when I was doing, I was thinking about this the other day remember when we were doing, second year and second year, when we were doing proofs, some people, when they were learning proofs, they were learning them by understanding them. Some were learning them by cramming them.
Yeah.
Some was in between. I learned proofs by sequences. I would think in my mind, I was like, okay, after this step comes this step, after that step. I didn't necessarily understand the steps, but I knew how the steps followed each other, and it followed a pattern. So then in the test, I just need to remember the first paragraph, but again, the first 2 lines of the proof.
Yeah.
Once I remember them, my brain kind of like, okay, after that step comes the steps. And then I go there, we'll go there. Same thing with test writing. Those class tests, they were usually made from previous class tests. And then the answers would be similar structure. So I would learn like, okay, this question needs a similar structure. So if you start this way, it goes from this to this to this, and then this to this to this, and then that's how I pass most of my class tests, just by memorization. And would you say that I was born with my pattern recognition, or because of me playing a lot of chess that forced my brain to think a certain way?
I mean, it's both, right? But then also you bend more towards that kind of thinking. Right? So it's thinking from first principles. It's a thing that you learn over time, but then also in a way, by the way you were brought up and what you value in your circle as people, your friends and stuff, and how you think. Because I remember the people you hang out with, they actually influence you a lot.
Very much.
It's one of those things that, in a way, sometimes we get to think the way they think.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man, because of, in a way, genetics is one of those things that if people are social, they like to go to parties and they like to have a nice time. Is it because of they were born to do that, right? Or because of, okay, they grew up in this place where actually partying is a thing.
And then just gravitate towards that.
Yeah.
Which there is an argument to be said, even on my case, to say maybe you were born with a mind that thinks that way, and chess just allowed you to hone that to a better thing. Because I know a lot of people are not interested in chess, but I know a lot of people who are interested in chess from a young age. So maybe, some people are born with the brain that likes to recognize patterns, and they get something that hones hones that pattern. Like, as much as we're talking about, like you see, we're talking about soccer before this podcast. As much as Messi seems to be born with this gift, he practice over time made this gift even more refined and more, more vivid, and for him to be even better at it. So even though he was born with it, if he didn't practice on it, he might not be at the level he is at today. So even me, maybe I was born with it, and chess just allowed me to enforce it in my mind. And party people that are just born socially, and the social space allows them to hone that socialness even more.
Yeah. It's probably the fact that, in a way, your body is ready for it. Your mind is ready for that thing. Then you just have to take it a step further. Because of, in a way, think about it this way, right? When you're in school, you take the same subjects. In grade 1, in the class, take some subjects. But in some kids, they enjoy them more than others. And some they excel more than others. And then the guy who doesn't enjoy, you find that, okay, now in the physics class, so I'm thinking about high school now. In the physics class, he's actually trying, he's working hard, he gets good marks, but because of he has to spend a lot of time on it. And you find that in biology or other classes, then he just gets good marks. It's how they think and how they are wired. But nature versus nature, it's a debate that's ongoing. People talk about it all the time. But then in a way, there's always a balance, right? There's the normal curve always takes precedence. You find that most people are just in the middle, and then find other guys who are just in the opposite end. They become the best in what they're doing. You find that Dr. Kumar, you find your Messi, your Ronaldo, and nowadays, maybe Lodge, but I'm not a Pirates fan. I'm not gonna talk about Lodge.
Yeah, let's not just make other people popular than we don't necessarily favor. Our team is struggling where it is now, so ish.
We're losing against Sundowns.
Dude.
But you heard what Steve Compella said? That was crazy. He said that if a bed stays in the wires for too long, it's inviting stones. That's crazy.
And that bird didn't fly away at all. It stayed where it was until stones eventually landed.
Yeah. You said we invited the stones as Kazashis. What we did in a way.
7 years without a trophy. Of course, you're gonna want to celebrate before the trophy's in your hands. That's just the nature of it.
In the first part of the season, I think we won 14 out of 15 games. I mean, that was crazy.
Yeah, I think it was 13 out of 15 or something like
13 out of 15.
Or 12 out of 15 with 2 draws and 1 loss or something. It was just impressive. And then,
Liverpool style.
Liverpool style. Maybe if it's Liverpool style, next season we'll pull through, a 33 game win like Liverpool. But, or in our case, it will be at
25 maybe.
Yeah, 25. But we've been hoping for too much and for too long. I think.
But what I'm happy about is that they brought a lot of good players in. We have that other guy called Mo, and there's the guy called Sifama. He's also 17, which is interesting.
Yeah, I saw one of his games. It was. I don't usually watch SA football, but when I watch it, you try to notice the good players, and I think on his debut, the boy showed that he's ready for the big stages.
Yeah, and also in South Africa, it takes years to you see a young player coming in. I mean, the last time we saw a young player was Steve Lekulea. I think he debuted at 16, which is crazy.
It's crazy until you realize even when Bruno was debuting at 16 at Everton, they're like,
when Bruno?
Yeah. Because what's this overseas? I think SS are still behind with a lot of things. Like, for instance, they're behind with the idea of young players coming to the team. As you can see in Europe.
Yeah.
Like, what's this? Bongani Zungu once said that when they asked him, Ejo, what's the one thing you realized when you got there? And he went overseas in Europe when he was 25. It's like when he got there, he was like the older guys. Everyone was just so young. But when he left AC, he was one of the young guys. You know what I mean?
Crazy.
And with AC being behind a lot of things, one of the things that they are behind with is, I think Quentin once said this, is that the banking system in SA, the systems and the products offered are just like what they were offering in the US in the 1990s. Like in the US, there's so much new products. The systems are so robust and so mind-blowing that in SA you feel like, dude, you are still so far behind. And maybe it's time for people with like machine learning experiences to take center stage and try to build systems for like banks and companies. Because as you said, machine learning, a lot of it is regression modeling and automation. And how many companies need that?
But I mean, the South Africans need the same systems that the US has. Chances are probably not.
It doesn't. Yeah, because maybe those systems came out of necessity and some of them out of creativity. But something simple as automation in the SA banking system is like where it's only in the last 5 years that banking apps came live. That's incredibly ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even now the systems are not efficient. Like some banking apps only work in certain things. Some you have to go to the bank for them to work. Yeah, it's just incredible how, I mean, we are so far behind with some of these technologies.
Because we also don't have an online only bank, like, the Monzo thing.
Time Bank is trying that.
Time Bank.
Yeah, but it's failing you. I think it only got started like either last year or 2 years ago. So, I think that's one of the only banks that are trying to be online, purely online. But the fact that it's in the last year or two just speaks volumes. You know what I mean? It's like,
but it's also not a South African company. What is it, like American? Or
Time Bank.
Time Bank. Is it South African? I doubt.
I think it is. I think it might be. I don't want to just say something that's not true.
But I had the app once just to check my credit score, because they used to offer it for free. You can just use, instead of like paying TransUnion and all these guys, then I could just check it for free. But then it seemed like, in a way, the feel I got from the app is that it's been something they've been doing for a long time.
Oh, so you think that's why you think it's international?
Yeah.
You think from your experience that it's it was made by someone who's been doing this for a while, not someone who just started.
New apps are not that great. Usually, like the first version of the app, I mean.
yeah. I mean, like, do you remember how Facebook looked when it first popped up? It was just for everyone. It was amazing for the time, but I mean, like when you look back, you're just like, what the hell were we typing with that thing? It just.
The app that has always been simple is Instagram. There isn't a lot they can do there.
Yeah, take a picture, post it, get likes, scroll.
There's no poking. What is poking?
You see? But hey man, I think we touched on a lot of things. Is there anything, you still you wanna touch on? Maybe that, might have been on your mind?
Nah. We can still do another episode, but
okay.
We'll talk about a lot of things.
But anyway, man, this was so much fun to do. I learned also a bit of things in machine learning. Artificial intelligence that, you think you know some stuff, but until you're in front of someone who actually knows them.
Yeah, I'm not an AI guru or anything, but it's just something that I like. It's not my...
And I think we've realized with most of the things that, and amongst most of our friends, that those who know more is because they read more. I think I've said this in the last podcast with Quentin, is that I think there's only few things that we usually find difficult to understand if we dedicate the time to understand them. You know what I mean? It's like if we dedicated the time to try to understand something, especially if you're interested in it, you eventually find the flow information of where the experts are and how far the gap between you and them are, and then you start trying little by little closing that gap. It will start at 0%, 200%, but if you're at 20%, you're at least 20% better than the people at 0%. So
it's always a slow process, because in a way you have to break that concept barriers at the beginning. You just have to get the basics first, and those basics are a lot harder to learn than the other improved stuff, the other concepts. But
the fundamentals, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure learning long division was harder than learning integration.
Yes. Yeah, that is a good point.
Yeah, the basics are always hard, but then you have to keep going back to the basics.
And also learning what is expected, expected value was much harder than understanding loss distributions.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because you know what the loss distributions mean, the means, the curves. But understanding mean is here, standard deviation is this times to the left side, it was so much more difficult than learning the more advanced part. But then you realize that at the advanced part, the learning curve starts being less and less steep. You learn a little thing that you learn goes a long way, but to learn that extra little becomes more difficult because it's just, I'm just a good example. It's just with statistics, the difference between statistics in third year versus statistics in honors, it's not that big of a jump, but there's a big difference. There's not a big of a jump in concepts and understanding. Like a third year statistics student can take a proof and be like, okay, I can kind of see where it's going, but for them to really understand it and the nuances it's a whole other different level to someone who's actually understanding the nuances. It's more about the nuances than the actual concept.
The actual thing, yeah.
You see.
Because for me, I'm a fan of just knowing the basics. I think it's always powerful to just have the basics, because the basics are always simple. The basics are always simple.
They're hard to, make them second nature.
Yeah.
But they can be simple to understand. And also, I think one thing that I learned about learning the basics, which is also why I'm just interested in everything new or everything that I don't understand, is it helps you have a conversation with an expert. You know what I mean? Like now, the highest level of stats I did was third year.
Yeah.
But I can talk to a PhD stats student about what he's doing, and then he'd be like, I'm using Gaussian statistics. I'm like, okay, what is he trying to do? I have no idea what Gaussian is, but if they try to explain it, I can kind of see where their mind is going. I won't be at the same level as they are, and I won't be understanding to the same level, but I'm able to have a conversation and understand what they're trying to do. And I think that's what a lot of people should be striving to do, is like, even if you don't understand something, just try to learn the basics at the very least. And the advanced stuff, you can leave them to the experts for.
Yeah, because in a way, when you get into a new field that you're not familiar with, you just have to ask that, what is it that I need to know as a person that's trying to learn this? Because, for example, when people ask for financial advice, and obviously, managing finances is hard, right? But then, obviously, if you're really interested in finance, go and compound interest and, other things like the derivatives and all this.
Yeah, those are like, what's this?
Chances are you won't need them, right?
And the thing about that is because usually complex things are just a combination of the fundamentals in a clever way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like derivatives, it's just a clever way of putting two kind of products together. It's like, okay, this one wants to sell, this one wants to do, so you can come in between and kind of do squeeze those two in between, or what's this? Because derivatives is just like, okay, I'm trying to copy that financial product. You have to first understand shares and everything, and then once you understand, like, oh, they're just trying to copy this body of shares and replicate how it's moving into one product. You get the concept, but if you don't understand shares and how they move in the first place, there's no way you're going to touch derivatives. You know what I mean?
You're going to start at the top. So learning things, it's always bottom up. It's like start at the bottom and go up. Top down, it works sometimes. Top down is actually hard because of, when you're doing a top down learning, is that unless if you are familiar with something else, and then you can easily apply to a new field, right? And then you can start at the top and say like, okay, in this field, what can get you far without a lot of work? And then you generally find that there's already some tools developed, and you don't have to like sort of redevelop yourself. But then,
like coding, for instance.
Coding, for example, say you can just use other people's code but then sooner or later, I mean, not sooner or later, but then soon, like it doesn't take too long. At some point, you need to write your own code.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So for me, the way I watch this, if you're gonna do top down approach, learn the fundamentals and then go to the top. So instead of going from 0 to 100 or 100 to 0, go from 0 to 20% and then jump to 100 and then start coming down. Because that first 20% is so important to understand how everything is, and then maybe you can go the top down approach.
Yeah, that's why in that finance class they taught us how to like derive these formulas and all those things. And then at the end of the semester, like, okay, in the exam you don't need to derive everything. We'll give you a lookup table. Because of, unless if they ask you to derive that thing, then it's not material, because there's already a simplified formula for that.
Yeah.
But then also, if you understand something, you're not going to ask for a cheat sheet. I mean, cheat sheets don't work. You don't want a cheat sheet. Maybe you want a cheat sheet if you are the expert. And then
because what is, you're just lazy to do the work. But if you understand the processes, that's the most important thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you've been doing combined interest for 10 years, you don't have to derive every combined interest.
Yeah, it's like, man, I just use Excel to be like, compound this thing.
Can you say, Excel, help me here?
But hey, dog, thank you so much for doing this, eh?
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, it was so much fun.